and I'm going to go ahead and get started. So good morning. Thank you for joining us. I am Amber Parr with the mortgage firm. With me is Ricky Dukes with New York Life. As a mortgage advisor and financial professional, we often work together to help you achieve your goals. So for some of us, for most of us at least, at some point in our lifetime, home ownership is going to be part of our portfolio. So sometimes Ricky is helping us access the funds that you've already saved to purchase a new home, and sometimes I'm helping you tap into the equity of your home um, to place those in various aspects of your financial portfolio. And what I appreciate so much about Ricky is that he operates the same way that I do, from a judgment-free space and from an authentic desire to help people. Like he just said, he is a father of six. He's lived in 4 different states, so he understands how life can change. And sometimes we need to reassess our financial strategy from time to time. So I am personally really looking forward to this presentation because even though I'm somewhat familiar with finance strategies, I'm 40 this year. I just moved to a new state. I've had some changes to my business, so it's definitely time for me to take another look at my own financial strategy. And so I'll be taking some notes, and with that, I will hand it over to Ricky.
All right. Well, good morning, Amber. It's always such a pleasure to work alongside you. So obviously, my name is Ricky Dukes, financial professional. I've been in the insurance industry for the last 13 and a half years, going on 14 years. And like she mentioned, I genuinely want to help people. There's a saying, people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. And so I believe that with a little bit of knowledge, you can move mountains. And so I won't take up too much of your time, and I'll try my hardest to make this as engaging as possible, because everyone knows that finances on a Friday is probably the most exciting thing that you're going to do the entire day. But this presentation is designed for you um, to kind of get an idea of maybe where you are right now compared to where you want to be in your finances. And then if there are any questions that you guys have for me at the end, actually, as I go through, feel free to just shout out. Actually, don't shout, just
I'll
let me
keep an eye
know.
on the chat,
Okay.
and I'll let
Okay.
you know.
Okay, perfect. All right. So there's a little bit of financial, or I'm sorry, a little bit of the legalese that we kind of have to go through. Um, yes, this is not going to be any text. I won't provide any text or legal advice alongside this. So the great thing, obviously, is that we are working alongside a loan officer, which helps us purchase a house. And so you want to think about your finances in the form of a house. So today we're just going to kind of give you a big picture of what mapping out your financial blueprint may look like. And so we're going to kind of break it down step by step. So obviously the first step, if you're wanting to know, if let's just say you're jumping in the car and you're like, I don't know where you guys are in the country, but let's say that you're like, I want to get to Maine. You need to know where you are right now in order to move towards Maine. So fortunately, right now, I don't know the age of everyone on here. Back in the day, I remember MapQuest and having to print everything out. And if I lost that, like I've spilled coffee on my MapQuest forms before, and then I was kind of messed up for a while until I got my bearings. But now we have our phones, so we're okay. That's awesome, Amber. And so the way that we can figure out where we are right now is a budget. And so we want to know what our cash flow is, how much is coming, how much is going out, the household income. So that would look like maybe your rent, any of your electricity, anything like that. And we want to figure out how much is being spit out on the back end. So having a budget is the most important thing to figure out, to establish kind of a baseline for where we are right now.
Ricky, for those of us that feel like we have ADD, is there a way to go full screen mode so we don't see the next slide? Because I'm jumping ahead. It's okay if not.
Let's see. Give me 1 second here. I will change this. Give me 1 second here. How's that?
Yeah, awesome.
All right, very good. Is that better for everyone else?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So, as you guys saw, there are two types of financial mindsets. So, some people are all about living for the moment, spend your money right now, and the future will take care of itself. And then there are some people are very in tune to what the future is going to look like. So they'd rather save their pennies today, knowing that they're going to have a dollar in the future. So there's two different mindsets. So let's just take a moment, just take a second, and just think about, what type of person are you? Like, when you're actually thinking about how you spend your dollars, are you the type that goes out and you're like, you know what, I have $100 in my bank account. I'm going to spend 90, and not put that towards retirement. I'm going to go live my life, live my best life. That $100 compounded over the next, 20 years, that's a nice little pot of change. And I know that that's just a snapshot, but just kind of thinking about that, are you putting the money away towards your retirement like you should? Or are you living for the moment? And that's not bad either. The government will always take care of you, right?
Haha.
Right. That was a joke. It was totally a joke. Okay. Totally a joke. All right. So when we're thinking about a house, any home, it always starts with the base. It starts with the protection portion. So we're going to start off with the protection portion, talk about that, and we'll just move on to the accumulation portion and then the preservation. We'll just kind of go step by step. So the protection portion would look something like this. Do you have a will set up? Do you have a trust set up for your family if you have a family? Do you have emergency savings? So whether you have a family or not, are you able to survive 6 months without having any income at all? Would you be comfortable doing that? How's your debt? What is that looking like? Do you give to any charities, or do you tithe? How's your health insurance looking? When was the last time you looked at it? Is it affordable for you? Are there better choices? When was the last time you got your homeowners, your renters policy, your auto insurance looked at? Is it a good price? Are you with a good company? If you got in an accident, will they cover you? These are all some of the things that you'd want to look at. What about your paycheck? Is your paycheck covered? If you got in an accident and you weren't able to go to work, how would you still make money other than dipping into your emergency savings? When you do get to the age where eventually someone might need to take care of you, or you go into a home, is there something in place that's going to preserve the money that you have saved? So if you have $1 million there, are you planning on using all that $1 million are you going to give all that money to the government? Or are you going to protect it against Medicaid? Do you have life insurance in place? Life insurance is not at all for the person that you are today. It's very much for the people that you're leaving behind. Do you have something in place that's going to make sure that you're taking care of them, so they're not having to scrape to pay for any final expenses? So the first thing that we'll kind of break down is about the wills and the power of attorney. So I won't go into too deep, because that's not my field, but I do partner with a lot of attorneys. There's a lot of times we will partner with helping people set up their trusts, making sure that their finances are in a trust, so when that time comes, they're able to divvy up the funds the way that they want to. A lot of people think that a will or a power of attorney is necessary only if you're rich, but that's not the case at all. I recently had a phone call with an individual who they only had $25,000 and a house that they had to deal with. But because the will wasn't updated and the family dynamics had changed so drastically within a few years, now they've been in court going over estate issues for the last year now, just going through different issues because there wasn't anything solid in place. And so it's very important, regardless of where you are in your finances, to kind of have an idea of where you want things to go. once you've passed, especially if there are children involved. All right, so the emergency fund. So I'm going to, by show of hands, who knows who Dave Ramsey is? Everyone knows who Dave Ramsey. So whether you believe in Dave Ramsey's teachings or not, he does say one thing that I think is absolutely brilliant, and I mentioned it earlier, the having 6 months of finances built up as an emergency fund. That's huge. It could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, but you really just don't know what can happen. Whether your car is breaking down or a tree falls on your house and you need to stay in a hotel for a little while, which should be covered by insurance, but maybe you're probably going to end up spending more money out if that's the case, out eating out if that's the case. So having a little bit of a buffer so that you can live comfortably is huge. And so that's obviously something also when you're purchasing a house, having a little bit of extra cash lying around isn't going to hurt the loan process, right? All right, and so we'll talk about debt management. So one of the best ways to get ahead financially is to make sure that you never fall behind. It used to be back in the 50s or so, once you hit zero, that was the end. But thank goodness that credit cards came along. We can hit zero and just keep going down, right? So unfortunately, especially if you've pursued higher education, there's an opportunity where you can start off. If you're used to playing Monopoly, you're starting off day number 1 behind the 8 ball. And so I have a question for the group. How much debt do you think the average American has? Go on and shout it out.
40,000. Evie says too much.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. Well, I will show you the average American has a total of $96,000, over $96,000 in debt. And
That's not bad if you consider mortgages, though, included in that.
That is true. That is true. That's very true. Yes. If we were going to remove that, I know that the number would be lower, but it's still, I think it was around $8,000 per person. And unfortunately, during COVID, a lot of us were able to get that number knocked down. But it's still, I mean, $8,000 in consumer debt is still pretty high. So disability insurance. So I talked a little bit about protecting your paycheck, right? So a lot of people that I run into in their 20s don't really think about this, but about 3 months ago, I was working with a young man who on the night out on the town, and he was beat up by a group of guys, and because he was beaten so severely, he wasn't able to go to work, and he ended up losing his job. His job didn't refund him. They didn't pay any of his medical bills. I mean, except for the insurance that he had in place, but his paycheck wasn't protected at all. And so what disability insurance does is it comes in and says, okay, you make, example, $100,000, we're going to give you $50,000 or $75,000 to compensate for that if you aren't able to find a job. So obviously it depends on the severity of the injury. And I mentioned long-term care insurance. If you have parents or people that are around their 70s, 80s, you know that there's a pretty decent chance that at some point they're not going to be able to do some of these very basic things: eating without assistance, eating, dressing, bathing, transferring themselves from one place to another, toileting, so go to the bathroom by themselves, or continence. Their mental capabilities are compromised. If at any point 2 of these things are unable to be done or performed without assistance, they're eligible for what's called long-term care. And so it's not nearly as expensive as people think, especially if you get it younger. And depending on how it's structured, in some cases you can pay it up. So you might be able to pay off the entire policy within 10 to 15 years, and then you have it for the rest of your life. So some things like that are just really important to have to protect your finances when retirement does happen. All right. So just talking a little bit more about long-term care. Mentioned that it does it covers you in the home and obviously outside of the home as well. So if you went into a facility, the majority of the individuals that I work with want to stay at home when they are retiring. So they've already paid for their home. So long-term care, if it's done
Ricky, you're
correctly,
the host, so you can mute. There you go. Okay.
long-term care will come if the policy is set up correctly. They'll come in and they'll completely take care of that individual in the home without having to worry about them moving out or being put into a facility. And I think that's, ultimately that might be what everyone wants. At the end of the day, you want to be somewhere that's comfortable. You're not wanting to have to, leave your home that you've worked so hard for. All right, and moving along. All right, life insurance. So, quick question, just polling the group. What is your most important asset?
My child, my life. Is this a trick question? Me?
That's right. It's you. Your ability to earn income. That is the most important thing. So whether you lost your cell phone or your keys, really, even if you lost your house, all of those things, as long as you're able to work, you're able to make up that income. And so without having something in place, it makes it very difficult for that for all of your working years to be replaced. That's ultimately what I'm trying to say. All right. And so obviously most people are very aware of insurance that you get at work. So when you're talking about oftentimes when I'm talking to people, they'll say, oh, I have insurance through work. But here's the question: insurance through work, who owns that policy? Does anyone know?
I thought I did.
No. So the policies through work are actually owned by your job. So we'll go back to the person that makes $100,000. What you might see is an option, and it's called supplemental life insurance. That's actually owned by your insurance company, which is why the premium increases every year. That's not why it increases every year here. That's why the premium can increase every year, because it's not owned by you. Also, if you notice, once you leave that job, the insurance doesn't go with you. So if you're 40 years old today and you have the insurance in place, but you're planning on retiring at 65 years old, between the age of 65 and let's just say 100, what insurance do you have in place to kind of take care of that? That's ultimately what I'm, kind of getting at. So having personal insurance versus just insurance through your job is something that you may want to consider. But did you know that obviously the employer pays almost the majority of that insurance through your work, which is why they're able to own that, and you pay pennies on the dollar. Also, it doesn't require any underwriting, which is great. And so it's also a write-off for the job. So, they kind of like that. Most companies kind of like that as well. All right. So I'll zoom through this very quick. We won't hang out too much on life insurance. So I'm actually going to jump over this one. I'm going to just talk about two different types of life insurance because I just really love this slide because it has so much to do with what Amber does. Temporary life insurance or term insurance that lasts for a period of time. So obviously, you know, when we're talking about election season is right around the corner. So we know that for the next 4 years, we're going to have a president. And this is not a political statement at all. Please understand that. But we know that for the next 4 years, we're going to have a president. And so there's a term. The term limit is 4 years. Life insurance can be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 15 years, but there is a term limit. Permanent insurance would be like owning a house versus renting a house. So you'll notice there's the for rent versus for sale sign there. And so the permanent insurance lasts for your entire life. So when you hit 110 years old, that insurance is still in place. And there are some wonderful additions to those types of policies, like it builds cash that you can borrow against, or you can just withdraw at your as you see fit. But that's kind of getting into the weeds a little bit, so we won't go too deep into that. But as long as you continue to pay for the permanent insurance, the premiums will stay in force. For the term policies or the temporary insurance, like I mentioned, there is a date that it does stop. And I've been going on for a little bit now. What questions have kind of popped up so far?
I've heard about a life insurance policy that if a claim is never made on it, that you can either get all or some of the funds back at the end of the term.
Yeah.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of that? I mean, I guess when I heard about it, I was like, well, why aren't they all like that? What are the pros and cons?
Right, right. So those types of policies generally are the premiums are usually about double the amount of just your typical term. So oftentimes there's let's just say a regular term policy might cost $40 a month, depending on, you know, whatever your $40 a month, let's just say for $500,000. A term policy with the return of premium rider, which is what you're referencing, might look closer to $200 a month.
Oh, okay.
So you are definitely paying to be able to get all of your money back. You'll get the full $200. You know, let's say it's $200 over a 10-year cycle. I don't know. So that would be $2,400. That'd be $24,000. You'd receive that full $24,000 back. But
Okay.
do you really, is that worth it to you? Would kind of be the question. Is that worth it?
And then another question, Evie's having trouble in the chat, so she's texting me, but I also know we both watch too much Investigation Discovery. Can someone take out a life insurance policy on you without your knowledge?
That is a loaded question. I'm gonna say no.
Not
No.
supposed to?
No, you're definitely not supposed to at all. Definitely not supposed to at all. And that includes taking it out on children as well. So let's say that I wanted to, or even my parents. So my parents took out life policies on my kids, but in order for me, or in order for them, for the insurance company to accept it, there had to be a signature from the parent or guardian as well. So no, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, depending on the way you're looking at it, you can't take out policies on people without their knowledge.
Good. I'm just trying to make sure everybody's still awake.
All right. What other questions have popped up so far? So we're going to jump into the accumulation portion next, which is that's the fun part. That's the
good stuff. That's where we are right now.
Right. That's the portion where the dreamers are able to.
Let's do it. Let's dream.
All right, let's go. All right. So like I mentioned, we're going to jump into the accumulation portion. And so with the accumulation portion, the average American, like I mentioned before, is probably in debt of some kind. Thank you so much for Angela for mentioning owning a home, that's obviously going to contribute to it. But another form of debt would, of course, be student loan debt. So if you've had higher education. So there are so many different vehicles that can be utilized to save for college purposes. And so starting with college funding, you could talk about 529 accounts or yeah, there's different ones, covered L accounts. But the entire point is there's really two reasons why people are paying attention to accumulating their funds or their wealth. Number one, it would be for college. And then number two is retirement planning. So everyone's dreaming of the day where they become paycheck optional. And I say paycheck optional because maybe you don't want to retire. Maybe the idea of being a Walmart greeter appeals to you. But you, on that day, that one person makes you really upset, you want to be able to chuck up the deuces and say, I'm not doing this anymore, but you're paycheck optional. You know that the money that you need is going to come in, come rain or shine. And so when we do retirement planning, when we talk about that, there's three tax buckets. Number one, there's the taxable bucket. So the taxable bucket, that would be taxed now. So that would be things like having dividends, or if you own real estate, or if you have, I don't know, let me think of something else. Oh, your bank account, when you have money in your bank account and you're receiving dividends from that. All of those are taxed today, your paycheck. Then there is another bucket of tax deferred. These are kicking the bucket down the road. So it's not that you won't be taxed. It's just, I'm going to be taxed later on when Uncle Sam forces me to be taxed. So that would be maybe at retirement or when you start withdrawing those funds. So that would look like an IRA, a 401k, your traditional 401ks or 403b or pension accounts or SEP accounts, if you're a small business owner, simple IRAs. All of these are just delaying the inevitable. And then there's the third option, which is having the Roth account. So Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, which I think are just one of the most amazing things ever. And then cash value life policies. And also 529 accounts, which kind of goes back to the college planning accounts if you have kids and you think they'll probably go to college one day.
I have both a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA. And I can't remember why that is. I think when I was 20 something, someone advised me to get a Roth IRA. My understanding is that once I do retire, I won't pay taxes again on that money. That's the difference?
Yes, that's exactly correct. So with the Roth IRA, you pay the taxes on the seed and you are able to reap the benefits of the harvest tax-free. So if you put in, I'll just say $500, you pay taxes on that $500, but if that $500 over a 45-year period turns into, $3,000, it should be way more than that. But let's just say $3,000, you don't pay any taxes on that growth at all.
Okay.
Versus the traditional account, which you also have, you don't pay any taxes on that $500, but if it turns into $3,000, then you're paying taxes on that full amount.
So with the Roth IRA, I just want to make sure I understand correctly. It's basically already been taxed, right? Because I got money from my employer. My employer didn't put money into my Roth IRA account, pre-tax dollars. This is money that I have netted. So I've technically already paid taxes on it. And then when I make the deposit to my Roth IRA, it doesn't like reduce a certain tax amount once I deposit it into the account. It's saying it knows it's money that's coming from me that's already been taxed. I'm just holding it here until I retire. And at which point, when I take it out, I'm not paying taxes again.
That's correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. That was fun. Thank you. All right. So oftentimes when you're thinking about your investment, the way that you're investing your funds, So you'll hear this often. Is this person aggressive or are they conservative? Just kind of breaking down where you are right now in terms of how you feel about money being made. So, or how your money should behave is actually a better way of saying that. So if you are concerned, if you put $10 into the market, if you would be concerned if 50%, so $5 of that disappeared over a 5-month period, if something like that causes you anxiety, you may not be an aggressive investor. If you are okay saying, hey, I don't mind if I put $10 in and then I receive 10 cents, I'm okay with that as long as it continues to be 10 cents. I'm all right with that. You might be a more conservative investor. So each person is a little different. There are a list of questions that we ask in order to determine where you kind of fall on that spectrum. But it is important for you to know, and there's plenty of tools out there that can kind of walk you through that. Right. And so now we'll talk about the preservation. So we've talked about protection, making sure that worst case scenarios, that's taken care of. The accumulation portion, which is I relish the day that I don't have to work anymore. But we want to make sure that if we're talking about this being a house, that the roof is on top. So making sure that the money is actually staying where it belongs and that it's protected from Uncle Sam or inflation. All of those things are things that we kind of go through at the New York Life. So here are some of the tools that we use to make sure that you are preserving the lifestyle that you want. So we go through a risk assessment. You want to make sure that your estate is set up well. I can't tell you how many people that I work with where their estates just weren't structured properly, and now at the age of 70 plus, they're trying to figure out how they can preserve their funds and it's not being subject to Medicaid. That's a huge thing. Or like I mentioned before, if there are assets like a house and the will hasn't been set up properly, that it ends up being given to their ex or whatever the case is. A lot of that's very important. Making sure that your pension is maximized, making sure that you're not being taxed heavily on your pension. Who knows about required minimum distributions? This is like kind of a well-kept secret. Okay, so required minimum distributions are something else. So just a little bit of knowledge, this kind of off the cuff. So required minimum distributions, basically, if you don't spend a specific amount of your money by the time you're 72 years old, Uncle Sam says, hey, I haven't had an opportunity to tax that money. I need you to give me some of that because I want to be able to tax you. And so there are ways to preserve your funds from required minimum distributions. We call them RMDs, but don't want to do that. Making sure that you have a budget in place, which we mentioned earlier, and what that budget is going to look like. And then, of course, this is the question that I receive most from people is, do I have enough money to maintain my way of living even in retirement? And so guaranteeing that your lifetime income is protected. So whether you're 60 or whether you're 90 years old, you're still having money come in, come hell or high water. Bonus points for anyone that can tell me who said this great phrase. No, nobody? I think it was Benny Franklin.
Galileo. So, I don't know.
I think it was Ben Franklin, but it is very much, it's a very poignant, especially as it comes to your finances. Having something in place is going to allow you to be able to kind of know at least the path that you want to move on. And so I'm going to go through these next few kind of quickly because I want to jump to any questions that people might have at the end. So we talked about the financial household, the protection, the accumulation, and the preservation. Each one is crafted specifically for you. So the questions that are asked the way that we're constructing the recommendations that are made, they should be constructed with each person's specific needs in mind. So Amber isn't going to need the same thing as Angela, who isn't going to need the same thing as Blair, Blaine. So making sure that each person has the right thing at the right time, so that when that time comes, they're taken care of. That's what we're all about. And these next few are kind of about New York Life specifically. We're very well rated. We're the strongest rated company, A++. I could kind of go on and on about that, but here's a little bit of homework for you. Number 1, think about your goals. Number 2, prioritize your goals. Number 3, develop a strategy. And here's the huge one: taking action. That's a huge thing. How many of us have said, like, I'm going to start losing weight Monday I'm going to start it? But taking that action, taking that first step, figuring out what that first step should be, and having a laser focus towards that goal, and then updating, figuring out, doing progress reports for yourself, updating and reviewing your progress at least once a year. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. What questions do you have for me?
Evie has a question. She's self-employed. Can she switch from an SEP to an IRA?
So a SEP is an IRA. A SEP is a type of IRA.
Like, could she switch it to a Roth account where she wouldn't have to pay taxes on it down the road, or would that be a transfer thing? It's an individual question, maybe.
It's possible. It's possible, but she would have to pay taxes on it. So just the way that your question was the question is in its current form. Whenever you make a conversion from a traditional to a Roth, it creates a taxable event. So let's just say, for instance, you have $100,000 in a traditional account. If you attempted to roll that let's say you didn't work that year at all, and you're like, I'm going to take this year off and travel the world. If you converted all of that over to a Roth IRA at one time, that year, or April the 15th of the following year, Uncle Sam is going to say, hey, you made $100,000 last year. Good job. Because anything that's converted over to a Roth account is considered taxable for that year.
Would you say, and I understand if you can't answer this as a blanket statement, but in that situation, would it maybe make more sense to leave those funds alone to protect them, and then open an additional Roth account that you start contributing more to at this point, if now you're understanding the tax deferment
Perhaps.
issue?
It depends.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair.
Perhaps.
Good
That's
question,
a good question,
Evie.
It's a very good question. There are so many caveats to that question. I don't want. Yeah, I
Sure.
wouldn't.
That's fair. I get questions like that sometimes. I make this much money. What's my rate? And I'm like, oh, I can't answer that.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Angel.
Question. I have a 401k that I have through an employer, and I cannot contribute to it any longer. I can roll it over to an IRA, but what's the benefit? Is there a benefit or a non-benefit to me leaving it where it is now versus rolling it over to my IRA?
Right. So there's a couple of things in there. The first thing, I'm so glad that you didn't say, should I cash it out? That would have given me anxiety for the rest of the day. So thank goodness for not saying that. Thank goodness for not saying that. But what I would say is, generally when you roll it out of a an account that's held by a company, you have more options, a significant amount more options. So generally, when you are investing within a 401k, you have maybe 8 options. So you'll have like a target date fund, depending on how you answered the questions. But there aren't a lot of options. But let's just say, and I'm just going to use this for you, Angela. Let's just say you were like, hey, I want this money to grow at 10%. Like I want this money to make money for me. I want to remove the rails from it, and I just want it to go gangbusters. You're not going to be able to do that with anything that you have sitting in an account at any any company.
Okay.
But I think there's some, I've done it before, so there's some paperwork she could fill out, right, to have that transferred
Yeah, so
to a
there
new
is,
account.
I mean, if you already have an IRA set up at another institution, let's say you had Fidelity or even New York Life, we do that as well. You are able to transfer that. It's an extremely simple process. I actually do a seminar for that as well. It's a very, very simple process to roll those funds over, but then it would just be a matter of choosing the correct fund investment for you. Right, exactly.
And that's kind of where I guess it seems like my IRA wasn't doing as well as this 401k was, but maybe I just need to revisit where I have my IRA invested.
Okay.
So, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Ricky, do you recommend, Roth or other accounts where you pay the taxes now and then you don't pay taxes when you withdraw, or do you think it's better to put it in without paying? Do you think the tax deferred is better, or the where you pay taxes now and you don't have to pay when you withdraw is better, or is that another thing that kind of just depends on who it is?
Blaine, I love that question so much, and you're right, it is. But I will tell you, so my practice is built on this book right here. Let's see. Oh, come on.
You've disappeared.
Yeah, look at his disappearing trick. We don't want that to happen to our money, Ricky.
Come on. All right.
You're gonna have to read it to us. Power of zero.
Right. Okay. Oh, that's a weird angle. All right. So my entire practice is built on that book, and that book is all about getting you to the 0% tax bracket once you retire. So once you say, hey, I don't want to work anymore, my goal is to get every person that I work with so that they don't have to pay any taxes at all. But that takes planning. A huge part of that is having a Roth account set up. So the question that you're asking is perfect, but there are so many caveats to it. Number one. Number two, Roth IRAs as they are right now are capped. You can only contribute $6,500 annually to them, because anytime Uncle Sam sees an opportunity to not make money, they're going to put some sort of hood on it. Unless you're over the age of 50, at which point you can actually contribute $7,500 a year. But I don't think anyone on this call falls in that age range. So.
And if we did, we wouldn't admit it.
Oh, Evie. Oh, perfect, Evie. So you can contribute $7,500 annually to a Roth account if you so chose.
Thank you, Ricky.
Yes, absolutely, Blaine.
Ricky, my last question, I'm going to pick on Blaine a little bit because I know he's an attorney. How much does it cost me to call you and have a one-on-one conversation and bounce ideas off of you? Do you have a retainer fee like Blaine does?
No, I don't have a retainer fee. So a lot of the work that I do is just helping people out. And if you choose to do business with me, great, fantastic. That is funny, Blaine. If you choose to do business with me, fantastic. But the greatest payment that you could give me is a referral. If you feel like I've helped you in some way, please if you could put me in a position where I can help other people like this, that is absolutely stupendous. That's great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was really a good refresher for me. I hope that it was a good overview of all of the different products that are available to us. I know for me personally, I won't be able to, I wrote down the 4 most important ones for me in my situation. So I really appreciate you taking the time to go over each of those products with us. Can you put your contact information in the chat? I did send an email out before we all got on this call, at least with my contact information. So if you'd like to have a conversation with myself or Ricky, please reach out and we can set up a one-to-one to talk about your individual circumstances. And then Joseph is asking if you can please share the book title and author again. Thank you, Joseph. I know it was The Power of Zero, but I didn't see who the author was.
There you go.
David McKnight. Nice.
Yeah, and if there are any other questions, if you're looking for budgeting or debt consolidation, I'm not saying debt consolidation in the form of like, hey, I've got this course that I can sell you, not that, but personal story, me and my wife paid off $36,000 in debt within a 6-month period, just because we had like an extreme amount of focus and we had a plan in place and we executed it perfectly. So it's very possible. And my wife's like the crunchiest person ever. She's so like organic, fairly traded. So there were places where we couldn't cut corners, even though I wanted to. But I can, if I can do it, I feel like I can at least teach anyone else to do it. So
Hey, your wife is a saint. She's got 6 kids plus you. She can be as crunchy as she wants to be.
super crunchy.
Thank you so much, Ricky. That was really great. Thank you guys all so much who joined us. Did you say you have a budget planner? Can I share that with the group when I send out the recording for anybody who may have missed it? Is there like a budget worksheet that you have that I could share?
Yes, I will email that to you. Yes,
Excellent.
absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you guys so much.
All right.
Appreciate your
Thanks,
time.
guys. Have a great
Thank you,
day.
Ricky.
Yes,
Bye,
absolutely.
everybody.
Bye.